OHC stands for Open Healthcare Network. We are a team of enthusiastic developers and contributors committed to building open technology, especially in the healthcare domain.
The ratio of number of doctors and nurses in India is not comparable to the actual number of people who's required. The more time we are able to save, that's the time they can spend with the patient.
OHC built Care, which is our open source flagship product. We identify hospitals and connect them to the closest care center. The doctors or the specialists get a complete picture of how the patient is doing, and if the doctors feel that they need to be moved, then they have a referral system through the software that tracks the journey of the patient.
I'm not doing the miracles, but I'm just giving some tips of life-sustaining techniques. So that's how driving me and our team more and more.
Early on, we were very fortunate to have active participation from healthcare professionals. They're the ones telling us what to build, how to build.
The engineer showed me how I can contribute on GitHub. I am writing the special issue of I need this button there so that I can have better accessibility of shifting a patient. Within 1 week, I see a link to the finished product. That is when I really saw the magic.
We have more than 400 people contribute from around the world. The developers were very interested. They were like, okay, there is a request from a doctor. We have to go solve it for him. Then they pick up the issue. Then they actually go and build it.
We have seen the quality of code improve immensely with Copilot. So it's almost like everybody's gotten their own personal assistant.
I just have to say what I want in a few comments, and it's able to write out the entire thing for me. It's like another human helping me out. Having everything in open source from day one actually improved the trust.
When OHC came in, suddenly I realized that the small decision I make, the small issue that I file, now it's impacting millions.
This healthcare transformation created a very significant positive impact to every citizen of India.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you're joining from. Welcome to Open Source Friday. Thank you for being here today. I'm Andrea Griffiths, a la Colombia dev in all the places, and it is my pleasure to be here hosting an amazing group. Today we have a treat, folks, and we're going to get right to it because it's actually something that I think all of you are going to find super interesting and actually very, very useful for your day-to-day developer life. For those of you who are joining for the first time, Open Source Friday is a program sponsored by GitHub in which we highlight not only the amazing projects, but more importantly, the people behind the projects, the contributors, the maintainers, and all of you makers and creators who are making the world better with lines of code. Thank you for being here today. Again, welcome to Open Source Friday. Today, I have a treat for you. We have a team who is worked on a project called CodeCompass, and typically, I give a bit of an intro as to what the project is, but I think will be better served if we actually hear from someone who created, well, actually not created. He was sort of the, I guess, the unofficial leader of the project, but I'm going to let him explain. So I'd like to welcome Miguel Fierro, who is also, I guess, distant colleague of mine. He happened to be a principal data scientist manager at Microsoft. Hey, Miguel, welcome to Open Source Friday.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
We are so excited to have you here. I was so thrilled when I saw you open the issue on our Open Source Friday repo, and I'll be sharing that a little later, folks, for those of you who have amazing ideas for projects that should be featured here. And this project is dear and near to you, right? Can you tell us a little bit about how it came to be?
Yes. So apart from my work at Microsoft, I'm also a professor at IE University in Madrid, and I'm a professor of one subject called recommendation systems and chatbots. So in my class, the students, what they need to do is basically to do either a recommendation system or a chatbot. And what we're going to see today is actually the project of a group of these students. They are undergrad students, They are amazingly talented. They are young. They come from many different parts in the world. And what they have done is a recommender and chatbot to understand repositories on GitHub. And I just want to say that when you have these kind of students, it is amazing to be a teacher, right? Because at the end of the day, they can just do the work and pass the exam and then leave, but they actually went ahead and definitely worked super hard and made something that was really useful. And well, the only reason why they are presenting here is that I thought that their project was so good that I since I work at Microsoft, I started finding people at GitHub that might be interested in this project. So it's not just a project for undergrads. It's something that is useful and potentially can be useful for GitHub. So then I contacted you and then well, we're here, right? So I'm super honored to. They're going to introduce themselves and talk a little bit in detail about the project. I'm super honored to present the team of the CodeCompass.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And listen, for those of you who are joining here and are students yourselves, this is proof that when you go that extra bit, right, you put that extra effort, good things happen. And what a great beginning to your career as a developer to actually be thinking about open source and creating projects like this. And kudos to you, Miguel. I spent a lot of time with students last week, not quite this age, but professors don't get paid nearly enough to do the things that they do. So how about we bring the team in? I'm going to bring them in one by one. And then if you could join up and then just tell us like your name, where was your nationality and where you are. And I'd love to know also what you did for the project. And then let's go ahead and bring Gabe. Hey, Gabriel, hi.
Hey, thank you so much for having us. So yeah, my name is Gabriel de Olaguibel. I study at IE University of Madrid, and I was a part of Miguel's class. So I am from the United States. I'm from Austin, Texas, and that's where I currently am right now for the summer, visiting family. And then my roles within the project, Miguel, he assigned us various roles to take on of like something we'd want to do in our career. And it was related to what you would actually do in the industry. And so I took on as a project manager and also as a data engineer.
Awesome. Welcome, Gabriel. Thank you for being here. Welcome, Maud. Hi.
Hello, my name is Maud Helen Hovland, and I am Norwegian. And currently, I am in Australia, where it is 3 a.m. And I worked also as data engineer.
Welcome, and thank you for being here. It's so late for you, folks. We gotta give them some love in the comments, please. Let's drop some hearts, and let's welcome Luca. Hey, Luca.
Hello, everyone. I am Luca Cunha. I am Peruvian. Just like them, studying IE University. I was part of the data engineering team, but I also kind of took like some sort of project lead role. They might be able to roast me about it, but I was like forcing them to write like good code, good documentation, those kind of things as well.
I love this. Listen, somebody has to do it, right?
Yeah.
And the job fell to you. Welcome, Luca. Welcome, and thank you for being here. Let's bring in Kitty.
Hi, my name is Keti Sulamanidze, and I'm from the country of Georgia, currently located in Georgia as well. And I took on the role of data scientist and MLOps engineer.
Awesome. Welcome, Kitty. And it's also late for you, I would think, right?
A bit.
A little bit. I know we have a team member who's going to be joining us maybe a little bit later. Felix is wrapping up some real work, but let's bring in the meanwhile Miranda. Miranda, welcome to Open Source Friday. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. So my name is Miranda Drummond, and I am half English and half Italian, and I'm currently in Liguria in Italy with family. And yeah, in terms of the project, I think I kind of took on many roles as needed, ranging from data scientist to MLOps and a little bit of data engineering at the start. So yeah, a real mix.
I love it. I love how you assign these roles, Miguel, based on like what, like very much real world, that this is how companies work, right? Like when you have a project, you have a sprint, you have whatever feature you want to add to your product. That's really cool. But let's get right to the code, folks, because I want people to be able to enjoy the beauty that is CodeCompass. I think, Katie, you're going to show us a little bit of the demo. And if you don't mind, if we can go ahead and get the screen sharer, and we'll go ahead and get you folks here. In the meanwhile, while we're loading up the demos and things, folks, don't forget to go ahead and check out CodeCompass, the repo. I'm going to put it on the screen now. I'm going to also put it on the comments because at Open Source Friday, we like to start the awesome projects. So please go by, drop a star. Thank you so much. All right, here we are. And this looks great. Folks at home or at the office, or hopefully on a nice little long pasture relaxing on a Friday somewhere. If you can see the screen, if you need me to zoom in, go ahead and let me know and I'll let the team know. But take it away, Katie. What are we looking at?
So first, let us show you the demo of the recommender, and later on we'll delve into the technicalities of it and what's going on in the background. I need to mention that everything that is needed to run the project is provided in a repository. There is a data set that we're using, which is not placed in the GitHub repository, but everything that's needed to load the data to run. We have the script for that as well in the repository, and you can just run it and everything will go smoothly. So I'm gonna tell you a bit about how we're showing the demo. It's using the Streamlit library. And as we enter a user to generate recommendations for a GitHub user, the algorithm returns us a list of top 10 repositories that it believes the user would be interested in. So Maud, I'm going to pass it on to you now.
Yeah, so what better way to do this than just show you guys? So Gabriel, if you wouldn't mind, we're gonna use our dear professor as our lab rat and type in Miguel G. Fierro and get the recommendations. And here you see that we have a repository using Pillow. We also have Mindspore, which is an open source deep learning framework. We also have an open source community and tools for education. And then we also have some open CVs and transformers. So, Professor, what do you think about the recommendations? Do you have something to learn?
Very good. Very good, very good. I will start many of them, yeah.
Perfect. So basically some things that are worth mentioning here is that we have already cached some of the results. So that is why the computation of the recommendations is pretty quick. Normally, if you would generate recommendations for a new user, it would take around a minute. And also when you start a Streamlit app, it takes also about a minute for the whole data to load because it is a huge data set that we're currently using. Then this is kind of the first part of the CodeCompass. And now we're going to give it over to Gabriel, and he will show you the second part, which is the ChatBot.
Yeah. So, this is the first part for users like ourselves, students, anyone who wants to be better at coding to, discover new repositories. But we decided to take this a step further and actually build a chatbot where you can interact with these repositories. And I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of languages and frameworks that I don't really know. So sometimes when I look at these massive open source repositories, it's like, I don't really know what's going on and all that stuff. So we decided to create this chatbot, and this chatbot has various features to where you can interact with the repository. So it can extract file structures from the repositories, get the contents of any file, get the repo branches, commit histories. You can search the repo by keywords, search the commits by keywords, and find new repos. So we're going to do a little demo here. And, like I said, we use this a lot to showcase open source repositories. And what better way to showcase a repository than our own? So I'm going to show you also a little bit of the back end of how this works, but here's the query that I put. So I said, tell me about the following repository and what the project is. And then I put the link to our repository, which is the same link here. It's a GitHub link. So now I'm running it. It takes a little bit to run, but I'm going to show you a little bit of the back end of what's going on. So actually, if you pay attention right here, it's showing that it's actually pulling the structure of the repository. And then because I asked it for more details and to ask, more details about the project, it just knows that it could get some really good details from the README file. So it knows the path and all that. And so, we give it a second to load, and look at this. Voila. It pulls directly from our README. It provides embedded links within, and it tells you the 2 key features of our project: the recommendation system that Mod just showcased for us, and then this chatbot that we had, and then also instructions how you can load it, how you can run it, the Streamlit app here, and then to some more documentation here. But there's way more that we can do here. So you can actually query specific files. So within this repository, we have a file that we used when we were kind of prototyping it to run this exact chatbot in the terminal. And maybe you guys might find that useful as well, right? So, I could pull right here. I said, summarize and tell me the code in the run chatbot in terminal.py file, right? But you could also use this for a file that in a language that you don't even know and all these things. So let's run it, and let's look at the backend right here. So we can see that it's pulling the function that we created called get repo content. And then it is pulling the full path in there. Notice I didn't have to put the full path in my query, but it already knows because of the structure query function call that it made earlier. And so, you got to give it a few seconds for it to retrieve the data from the GitHub API and then communicate back with the LLM. And we'll break that down in a bit. But you can see here, it breaks down the file. It tells you that it serves as the main entry point for running the chatbot in the terminal. And these aren't things that we have commented in there really. So it tells you all the imports that we're using, all the secrets that we're using, initializing the clients, running the chatbot, using it with OpenAI, and kind of just some of the functions we're using to for like thread management and things like that, function calling. And it even shows here, which we don't have it commented in the file, that we have a Streamlit alternative to run this just like we're doing it right now, right? And it shows you the models that we're using and things like that. So this is an incredible way to just discover code. But there's way more features, and I think Miranda, my colleague, is going to talk a little bit about them.
Yeah, so moving on to a few more features that we think really make this chatbot add value. The first one is looking at the branches in the repo. So oftentimes when you have an open source repository, you have a number of branches, a number of pull requests that are being made. And so Gabriel now, I think, is going to show us a demonstration of, how that works within this. But yeah, we thought this was a real value add for, really like making it more transparent, more understandable, and hopefully, to encourage contributions as well.
Here we go. So it shows all the branches of everything we've been working on. You can see that, and we'll talk about this later, we've been trying to implement other chatbots, optimize their model running time. We have our stable main version, things like that. What's another query that we could use, Miranda?
So we also wanted to look at what some commits where the README file was updated. So checking, how is the documentation changing? So why don't we give that a go?
Sure. So I just asked it, what are some commits where the README file is updated? So let's take a look. So we're calling the function called get commit history, and it's using the file path of README, and it already knows the extension of it. So, this is kind of really cool where the LLM is doing the logic for you.
Yeah, it can take a minute sometimes, but.
I love it that you can do it in natural language and just tell it specifically, go find this. And
exactly. So you can see here that I was the last one to update the README. Mod made some changes, and you can actually click on this and boom, takes you to that exact commit. So that's really great for discovery. And we have one last prompt that we wanted to demo. Yes. I can go ahead and take that one. So, on the topic of recommenders and recommendation engines, I just want to say, hey, find me similar repositories related to recommenders, recommendation engines. Imagine it's a topic I'm really interested in, right? So let's look at the back end here. So we're using a function called find repos, and we're putting those 2 keywords in there. Let's give it a second for it to provide that feedback. Just like that. We have the links to the repositories, one about building recommendation engines, directly linked. These are working links. But yeah, that's the whole chatbot right there. It pairs very well with the recommendation engine because you could discover a new repository that you found interesting, and then take that to the chatbot and discover more about it, even if it's in languages and frameworks that you don't even know, right? And you can ask very broad questions. But I mean, that being said, I think we could go a little bit more into the technical breakdown about this and show you how we're doing this.
Let's do that. I think Luca's going to take that on.
Yeah, I'd love to start with it. Well, as pretty much as a data engineer, we had the problem with the data. Like, do we use a predetermined data set? Do we just build our own? How much data do we want? How much much data can we like actually make an MVP, for example? And we just decided to come up with our data set. We did find a data set online in Kaggle, like for with GitHub information, with GitHub repository informations that had already been collected by someone else. But we just decided to make ours, which we also ended up being like twice the size as that one. I don't remember how many million of records we ended up having, but it's in the millions. But like the first question was like, okay, which users do we start building our data set from? Because we need to start somewhere, obviously. So we just decided to set a query to the GitHub API, giving us all the users which met certain criteria. The criteria that we chose to get was give us all the users which who have at least 1,000 repos and at least 1,000 followers. That list came out to be actually like 17. I was expecting it to be like around 5, but it was 17-ish. From those users, we then started building a massive user set based on the followers of those people and the following of them. We ended up having a user set of around 78,000 users. We also had to put on some limitations due to the size and like how much we were actually waiting for all the users to be given to us, because being API calls, they take some time. It's in the seconds, but imagine it doing like thousands and thousands and thousands of time. It adds up. And then with like that user set, we divided the work. I took like some of the users. Felix took another part of the users. I don't remember if somebody else helped me, but I'm pretty sure somebody did. And yeah, we just started getting the information of those users. We started getting the repos and also the repos that they have start. But we limited it again to 1,000 repos per user in case there were more, just because of how much time it was already consuming, and also because of the size of the data. We realized that with the first like 18,000 users, we already on like the couple hundred thousands. And we were like, yeah, there's no way we're gonna actually be able to build this data set by when we have to deliver the project. So we'll just limit it and see the recommendations that we get. And yeah, well, that was our flow pretty much for getting the data. Then for data storage, Maud helped me a lot with it. I'm pretty sure she will love to explain it.
Yeah, I can explain how we store the data, and it's pretty simple actually. Because in the beginning, we were working just like with data frames in Python. So we were just thinking of a way to like store these CSVs that we generate, but in the cloud. So we made a Google Cloud project and we just set up credentials. We gave roles to different users. And then we made like a module with operations that we would use, like fetching, like getting the credentials. So you could fetch or you could download the CSVs and also upload the CSVs and also make them into data frames and all that kind of stuff. And this is basically just using the Google Cloud API. But just because we're like being transparent about how everything has gone and everything, when the data started getting so big, we kind of got problems with uploading and downloading the CSVs. So like Drive was not optimal. So what we have done, which we have actually just had the CSVs locally for generating the recommendations. But we have been looking into using Redis, and there is a branch which is called Redis 2, where we have kind of done the first things of at least having just a primary database in Redis. And in the beginning, I kind of just wanted to automate like the streamlining of the data. So we generate embeddings, right? So instead of just generating the embeddings and saving them to a CSV, I wanted to upload them straight to Redis. So we have a function for that. But again, a problem we had with the budget and everything is that these embeddings cost money to make, and we already have a CSV where we have already generated them. So we also just have simple functions for uploading a CSV to Redis and doing that kind of stuff, already utilizing what we have computed and what we have already done. And I think that using Redis would be very cool and also like a lot faster. But we also did see some kind of slow development in it, seeing how not it's very easy to set up on Linux and Mac, but it's not as easy with the configurations on Windows, and half our team is using Windows. So we ran into some kind of issues there. But it would be very cool to kind of automate the data pipeline and get the data and upload it straight to Redis so you could have it in memory. And now for something very, very interesting, at least, is the algorithm implementation, which Ketty will take you through.
Thank you. Thank you, Maud.
Gabriel, could you please share the diagram that we have of it?
Let's do that. And folks, I'm seeing your questions. We're going to go through the flow of, because I personally need to see this diagram to better digest all the information that was just given. So we're going to go through the flow of the diagram, and then we'll get to some questions. Go ahead, Kitty. Thank you.
To start from the beginning, we have two sources of input, two sources of data. We have the big data set of repositories that Luca mentioned, and we have the target user that we need to set when we want to generate recommendations for them. So we use this big data set of repos and the target user to pre-process the data frame and make it specific for the target user. Basically, what happens here is, in order for us to do light GBM training, which I'm going to talk about a bit later on, we need to personalize the data frame a bit, let's say so. We grab not only the information about different repositories, such as the number of stars it has, the language it uses, frameworks, etc., the description as well, but we also grab which repositories has the target user owned or has starred. So we assume that those are the ones that the user would be interested in. Now, the next part after having the personalized data frame is to train on it. And we use light GBM, light gradient boosting machine, as our algorithm for generating recommendations. It's an implementation of gradient boosting framework, and it was developed by Microsoft. And our professor, Miguel, is actually one of the main contributors there. And we chose light GBM for several reasons. First is its speed in training and prediction generation. It does that very fast. So if we wanted to do personalized recommendations, we thought doing it fast would be a way to go. Second is its flexibility in dealing with various types of features, including categoricals. So instead of one-hot encoding manually everything that usually needs to be done with categorical features, light GBM takes care of it itself. And one more thing is GitHub interactions can be sparse. So if we have this big data frame of repositories and the target user has only interacted with just a small portion of them, the data frame would be sparse. So light GBM is effective at handling sparse data as well. So that's why that's three of the main reasons we decided to go with it. We had some other alternatives that we considered, and we still think those would be very interesting to explore. It's long and short-term user representation, shortly LSTUR. It was considered, however, due to the fact that we had no time steps of user interactions, this option couldn't be explored further, but it would indeed be very interesting given that such data becomes available. The thing is, these interactions, when the some of the repositories the user has started, where those repositories start, if we had access to that data, this algorithm could also be very interesting to see. I'm going to pass it on to Miranda now to talk about ChatBot.
Yeah, I think before, in case there were any questions on the recommender, if anyone had any of those.
Let's do that. And I think the questions were more about the implementation. I'm going to take a quick scroll back and read a bit of the questions. There were some questions about running it locally, which I think we're going to get to the actual how you can contribute and how you can run the project. But your README is actually very good. Thank you. I did it myself this morning, so it's actually great. All right, let's see. About the data, the way that you call the data itself, why did you choose CSV over JSON?
I
can
can answer
take
that
that.
one, or Maud,
No,
actually.
Luca.
Go for it, Luca.
All right, I'll just say it, Maud, in case I missed something. Just help me here. Initially, like the API calls do retrieve a JSON file, but we only pick a specific. We only pick specific keys on that JSON based on like research that we had done. Like we just sat down like on the responses. We were like, this is useful, this is not useful, this is useful, this is not useful. So we have a function. Actually, you can find it on the helper functions file inside of the repo. And you can see there the fields we considered important, and converting, like once we had all those fields, converting it to CSV was very easy. It was very easy to work with, at least for the initial implementations. So that's the approach that we took. That's why we use CSVs and are looking to change it maybe in case we find something else. But CSVs were the way to go for us.
Oh, that's actually, thank you. And there's actually a suggestion in the chat that I'd like to share about a RAG API. Maybe it'd be a better integration than a CSV. So this is not really a question, but more a comment. So thank you so much. And thank you, Daniel, for the question. Appreciate you being here. And thank you. I'm not even going to try, y'all. Architecture for the comment. And thank you so much again to also Delta231, who basically just said what you just said, that CSV is easier to process compared to JSON. Let me see if there is any other questions on the chat. But I think we can go ahead and let's move into the chatbot, the technical aspects of it.
Yeah,
Great.
for sure. So so for our chatbot, essentially, we wanted to go like a bit further than just sort of just implementing like an API, like a ChatGPT API. How could we extend upon that and really go a little bit further? So we sort of began by using GPT 3.5 and found that of course, like gave answers that were very good and coherent, but we didn't really get that sort of level of depth and detail that Gabriel showed earlier, which really was customized. And so we ended up using a GitHub API wrapper, which Gabriel's going to explain in a second. And essentially what that meant was based on like the user input, it would decide whether or not it had to execute a number of functions that essentially were like utility functions. And that's kind of what we were showing earlier, the use case of all of them. And so, we also obviously coupled that with, after the utility function, we then go on to use ChatGPT 4, which is what we ended up using for kind of the integration between the two. And yeah, we also kind of briefly wanted to touch upon, there were a number of models that we kind of looked into. So as I mentioned, 3.5 and 4 for GPT, but we also ended up implementing, which is actually available now in one of the other branches in the repository, using Llama 3, which is actually open source and it's available through Hugging Face. And so, in keeping with the theme, obviously, of Open Source Fridays, we thought that, it was a valuable contribution to add. And I think Gabriel's going to address a bit later, kind of more models that we plan to use. So yeah, that's kind of like a brief overview of like the LLM integration, but I'm going to now hand over to Gabriel, who's going to talk to you a bit about, the overall system architecture and how that all kind of fits together.
Yeah, so just to add on before I get in the system diagram, so, there's two aspects to it. You have the LLM, you have different models within it. You have some better models like GPT-4o, GPT-4 Turbo, and 3.5. But then this model needs to know when to call these utility functions, right? Like the functions to get the structure of the repository, get the content of a specific file, and even kind of remember it, right? Because I don't know if you remember the demo, we said something about a README file, but we didn't put the extension, we didn't put the path to it, or like a specific file in there. So the LLM needs to be good enough to where it can actually reason about this and know first when to call the function. And I'll break that down in a second. And also like what inputs and parameters to put in this function. So we found that when we were using 3.5, it would be kind of 50-50. It would like use the wrong function sometimes. It would use the wrong parameters in it. So we found that 4, which is what we use in the demo, worked pretty well. But let me break down the system diagram right here. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So, this is a kind of like the whole agent, right? We decided to use OpenAI Assistance API, which at the time was in beta, or I think it still might be in beta, but it's in V1. And so what this assistant consists of is it has the system prompts, the instructions on how to execute this flow, the model, which we chose GPT-4, and then the list of functions, right? And that would be like the function that wraps the GitHub API to get the structure of the repository, to get the content, commits, many more, right? And so what the user would do is they would send a query to our chatbot, and from there the chatbot needs to decide, does a function need to be called or not? Does it already have the information, or is this something that's related? For example, you can ask it something like, what is Python? It doesn't need to call a function for that. If not, it'll just generate the response, send it back to the user, right? If it does, you say, tell me about the structure of this repository, it'll execute the function, which is then a wrap around the GitHub API, and then that sends, that response, which will be in JSON, will be sent back to the model to interpret based on the user's query, and then send back the response in like a very nice format, just like we saw in the demo, right? So yeah, that's just basically a simple overview of the chatbot. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that before we get into kind of some improvements and some contributions you guys could make about this chatbot and the other system.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else to add from the team, let's talk about what are you thinking in terms of a project. This project, how long did you work on this project? I have to ask a couple of questions before we talk about how to make it even greater than it already is.
Yeah, it was like we started Miguel's class in January and we finished the class at the end of April. So we only had about 4 months. And, a big part of it was just like, the first half, like figuring out what do we need to do? What are these technologies? Because we didn't know anything about recommendation systems, building chatbots, building assistants. So it's like kind of really the back half was us like really crunching it and trying to get this thing done, right? But yeah, I can go into some of the improvements. That being said, because we had such limited time, there's a lot of things that could be done to improve this, and we want to like openly invite all the attendees here to check it out. If you want to contribute or collaborate, like, you're welcome. But I can get into the chatbot part, and then I think after that we can talk about the recommendation system. But how Miranda said that we implemented some open source models. We try to implement like Gemini, all these things, but it's not as simple since we're using the OpenAI assistant to handle like a lot of the tools, the functions, and things like that. So maybe you'd have to implement like the LangChain library, and so that's not something that we have fully explored, but we have started, right? And it would also be very cool if we could allow this for the user experience with a multi-model selection once we get that done. So imagine you say, Claude 3.5 Sonnet right now is the best at coding. Allow the user to do that, or if they don't want to pay, then maybe they just want to use an open source model because they have a great computer that can use that model, right? And then, I don't know if Miranda wanted to add anything else on that.
No, I think that like pretty much covers the chatbot. Like Gabriel mentioned, we really as it's such a developing field that's really every day something new changes and something new arrives. So we want to make it as dynamic as possible, and so our system can essentially work with any model and perform equally as well. And I also kind of briefly wanted to touch upon, I've kind of been looking at the comments and I see a lot of questions about it being hosted. And so I also wanted to kind of address those. So if we zoom out a bit and just looking a bit at the general picture, obviously the main thing that we'd want to have is, when looking at the project, is hosting it, on somewhere in the cloud, and having that as well with a proper database. So of course then everyone can use it, and we could implement a lot more features, and just give our project as much visibility as possible. The second thing we really wanted to add is, so as Maud mentioned, we tried using a Redis database, but of course we had some slight configuration issues. So we also thought about using a Milvus database, which for those of you who aren't aware, it's an incredible tool. It's an open source vector database that's specifically been built for Gen AI. And we looked at sort of what would it look like to implement, and we realized that within the scope of our project, it would probably be too complex. But down the line, we definitely saw that as a potential improvement. Also, Katie mentioned in terms of the recommender, sort of the data sparsity that like GBM fixes, and also wanting to include time steps. We also think that if this was to be hosted, and we could have some sort of more like have more of a pipeline for data retrieval. So it's constantly scraping, it's constantly comparing against our data, saying how many users do we have? Is this repository in our database? And build some sort of pipeline like that. We think that could add a huge amount of value. And also, enable for our model to be fine-tuned even further. Sorry, I'm talking quite quickly because we have like a couple of things, but I'm going to open it up to questions in just a second. And then, we also wanted to kind of improve the data loading and generation. I also saw a couple of people comment that earlier, in regards to like CSV and JSON and all of that, and how exactly it's being loaded. I think another part of it was also, making it work for like our environment right now. I think if we had, a database that was like, we were, directly querying, we were also, thinking about like, specifically using in-memory and open source databases, which obviously Redis is enterprise. It has an open source version, but enterprise is where you really, have all the value. So doing something like that to also speed up the recommendations. And then finally, we would also really, if there was, we'd love to also add compatibility with private repositories, and potentially even integrate with platforms beyond GitHub, and see if, we could have some sort of, cross-platform recommender. And that kind of summarizes like all of our future improvements. But we really we wanted this to be like a conversational part of our talk today. So if anyone has any questions, we're really keen to answer them, and we're also really keen to kind of accept constructive criticism and feedback on things we could improve.
I love that. So for all of you who are watching, and if you have any ideas, right, like that's what we're here for, Open Source Friday. So if you have any ideas, if there is something that you think that the team could, whether it be an improvement or not, but let's first give our audience a clear path to giving that feedback. What would be the best way? Should they come to your repo and open an issue there? Everyone needs to go to the repo right now and give a star. That's number one. Let's do that first. But then how do you want to handle the feedback that might come in? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about a path to contributions. I'll take a look and see if there are any questions in the meanwhile.
Yeah, I think opening an issue would be great, just because everyone in the team gets notified when we do that. And, the instructions to set up the project are on the README. You had mentioned you had liked the README, but something that I forgot to mention that is actually very funny is, there's some parts of the README that I kind of had to make myself, but most of the README, guess what made the README? The ChatBot.
Beautiful.
We didn't have a README, so I put the link to the repository in the ChatBot, and I had to give it context. Okay, this is our project. This is what we're trying to do. Can you make me a README? It started doing the structured calls, the content calls. README just generated like that. So that's just an awesome way. Like, even if you already completed your project and you're working on something personal for yourself and you want to create a README, throw it in the chatbot, right? But yeah, opening an issue would be a great way for us to resolve any issues you may have. For us to have a conversation of what could be added. I think the whole group would be notified about that. And if anyone else has any ideas of how we could format that, that'd be good. Luca?
I kind of just want to add to it. Remember, guys, a couple months ago, somebody already left us like an issue or sent us an email, or I have no clue how they managed to communicate with us, but we tried to help them. We solved their issues. They were asking for the data set, for example, and we're like, we cannot share with you the entire data set due to the size of it. but like here's a small snippet for it. Like go try it yourself. This is how you would run it. This is where you would generate the credentials. Like all those kind of all that kind of information we already helped someone with, which could just like open that issue with us. So we do pay attention to them. That's where I'm trying to get to.
That's awesome. And also, folks, for those of you who may be watching this Open Source Friday, and this is not your jam, like just going through the fact of trying to go through the installation, get it running locally, you might find holes into that README, right? And you might be able to, that's another form of contribution. So open an issue first. Don't go straight to pull request, right? Let's open an issue first and discuss with the team what improvement, what you're thinking. That's great. We have just lots of thumbs up on the chat. Lots of that's actually really cool. I think our minds are a little bit blown. I can't wait for folks internally to talk about this project. Like as soon as I finish here, I'm gonna go in and be like, did you watch that? Because a lot of what we're doing to like make the developer experience better is to facilitate those things, right? Like creation of a README. Allowing recommendations to be more personalized is huge. There is so much goodness in GitHub, but it can be very overwhelming. For open source, especially if you're thinking of contributing to a project and you don't know where to begin looking, and you're not, I'm not gonna go contribute to the Linux kernel right now because I'm just getting started. It'll be like a really cool tool to use. So I love that. There are questions maybe about community. I think starting with the repo, what you folks are doing is already fantastic, and starting with issues. Maybe I can talk you into turning on discussions after the call, because then you have another way of talking to folks who are using it. So like we can use Telegram and Discord and all that, but it's nice to be close to the code. I don't see any pressing questions on the chat, and if I did miss it, please post it one more time so I'll take a look. The back scroll is a little bit long. But first of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you for coming to show us this amazing project. I can't believe you built this 4 months ago. Like this is, I guess you started in January and you started actively building like around 4 months. Is that so? That's kind of mind blowing. Miguel, this is what I didn't tell you I was going to do this. I have to ask you, like, I'd love for you, because I know that you were sort of guiding the project, but it looks like a lot of the logic, the project architecture, even deciding what tools to use, like this team did it. Like, what did you have to say to them?
Yeah, let me explain. So this project actually was designed and thought by them. So I was more like maybe guiding, hey, you can try this, you can try that. But at the end of the day, they were the real minds behind the project. And I think when it is a project that, because this is a project that is yours, guys, and I hopefully is better this approach than if someone tells you, hey, you need to do this and this and this and this. So this was a complete idea that they got, and I think the opportunity to present in front of GitHub employees and Microsoft employees and this being streamed, I think is probably the best grade or the best validation that you can have, because this is a thread that is at the level of many of the top tech companies in the world. So I think you're definitely prepared to join any of these companies, and I think your careers are going to be amazing.
What a professor. This is awesome. Yay, that's so great. And thank you for giving them all the credit, like they very, of course, very fairly deserve. That is awesome. Okay, so Miguel, if you had like the magic wand right now, and you could do anything, you heard the list of improvements that the team is already ideating, the things that they think, like if somebody's watching and they're like, you know what, I love this, and I want to do the thing that could be the most impactful, what would your recommendation be?
Well, the most impactful thing, and I think that would be amazing, is actually if somebody on GitHub actually get in contact with these guys and get more information about that, because I think this is something that is at the level that can be integrated in a real organization like GitHub. I think that would be amazing. And another part that I think is very important is the open source contribution. I think whether they decide to continue with the project or they decide to work on other open source projects, I think for people in our field, in the field of AI and software engineering, I always say that the best university in the world, from my perspective, is GitHub. That's where when you start doing open source, that's where you have some of the best developers, maybe the best developers in the world. So yeah, my advice for these guys and for all the audience that is listening and maybe they want to get a position in some of the big companies or just want to learn more, my approach is always learn by doing. One of the things that I tell these guys is nobody can teach you, you have to learn. And what that means is that basically, even if you go to courses and you have professors telling you the tricks, when you really learn is when you do the code. When you do the code, when you do the pull requests, when you work on GitHub, and when you have the errors, because obviously they are not telling all the errors that they got and all the things that all the things that
to be
didn't
fair,
work.
they did share a bit of when things didn't go through, right? So I do appreciate the transparency.
If you're a developer, you know that what you're showing is the nice shiny thing, but you had to go through all the errors and all the problems to get to this shiny thing.
Absolutely, 100%. I think I have some homework to do because I definitely want to put this in front of some folks and get them to take a look at it. And I am so excited for the evolution of this project now that is in the world, and you are open to contributions. You're open to continue iterating and making it great. My colleague just took a look at it. Kadesha, you wanna let's do something here. This is my colleague also who does Open Source Friday, but also has been very, very in depth in the world of LLMs, and I think this is aligned with some of the things that we've been doing internally. So, love the advice. Professor Miguel, thank you so much. That's wonderful. I think that those are when you learn the lessons when you're definitely like a little bit pulling your hair. But that's fantastic. So let's see. Learn by doing is actually a very effective learning strategy. Thank you, Daniel. That is very, very good advice. Now I have to ask, and I know that we're going a bit over time, but it's fine. I told y'all you have my whole afternoon if you want to. I'm so excited about this project. I want to ask each of you, right? If you have just one short piece of advice for someone who might be, what grade and university level are you? Like how much longer until you graduate? You can help me out by telling me that first.
We have one more year left. So we're
beautiful.
Rising seniors.
Rising senior. So I'm a rising senior and I'm watching this stream and I'm thinking, maybe I haven't started on a project that I can take with me after, or the real life application of what the real world, I think a lot of the things, and obviously you guys are super lucky to have a great professor, but I know a lot of folks that are still graduating with like not even version control being part of the conversation, and then you get to the workplace and you're like, oh, I need to learn how to use GitHub and how to collaborate and all these things. So you're really way ahead of the pack. But if you have one piece of advice for someone who maybe wants to start a project to kind of not only contribute to their education, but also to open source, what would it be? And we'll start with Gabriel. Just one piece of advice, a quick one.
I mean, real quick, it's just like you want to learn something, go and build it and make it something useful. So when Miguel gave us this project, he said, you need to learn recommendations and chatbots or both. Go and build it. You can choose whatever you want to do. And we had our discussion among our team about what are we going to do a recommendation on? What are we going to do a chatbot on? So do that for yourself, even if it's for something that can just recommend you something that you're interested in your personal life or in your work life or something like that. Build it for yourself, and that's how you can learn it.
I love that. And it's an open source project, folks. You can go ahead and fork it right now and get to work and make it what you want it to be. I love that. What about you, Kitty? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, to add on top of that, you might not have the best implementation from the start, right? Even we started with cosine similarity to generate recommendations. So I would say start from scratch and build up on top of it. And that makes the progress.
I love that. Progress, not perfect. This is beautiful. What about you, Miranda? Any advice?
Yeah, if my one piece of advice, I think it's more general. It would probably be like, really like learn from failure. I think the first like 10 iterations of this project were really, really horrible. But we like persevered and we pushed through, and we learned a lot from our failures and from going and seeking help from other people. So yeah, just like being okay with it and learning from it and not letting it, stop you. So.
I love that. How about you, Luca? Any recommendations?
Pretty much like combining a little bit of everything. Start small and then like get big. That's like the approach that I take for most of my project. That's the approach that we took for this project. Like we start like building a small data set, then we have like a bigger data set. Then it's like, oh, but we have to do testing for whenever we push to GitHub. Let's figure out how to do like proper testing. Let's the modules, and yeah, just start small and then just get big.
This is all excellent advice. How about you, Maud? Any final?
Final advice. Wow. I would maybe say don't be afraid to be a beginner. Like everyone is doing something for the first time, and sometimes you don't want to do something because you feel like you're bad, but you don't get any better by not trying at least. A bit cliche, but that's my advice.
I'm gonna need that on a t-shirt, on a mug. I love that. Don't be afraid to be a beginner. That's fantastic. That is excellent advice. So listen, and you don't have to be a student to be someone who wants to learn and try something new. We get so siloed in our own stacks and things sometimes that it's kind of hard to see, but there's a whole new world out there for us to try out. So even like you, Daniel, who says you're advanced in the industry, like this might still be something new. So don't be afraid to be a beginner at something. I love that. That's fantastic. Team, you are amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing this fantastic project. I hope that from here you have more contributions. The project continues to not only grow, but get even like in your wildest dream better. And definitely we need to talk and see what else can we do, because this is super, super exciting. You should be very, very proud of what you accomplished in such a short time. It's fantastic. And I can tell the way that you work together also is very lovely, which is a key thing. You're already telling you, you're farther ahead than most folks who are entering the industry. So be very proud of that. Miguel, thank you so much for bringing this project to our attention and for giving them the light and guiding them. This has been a treat. I love this. This has been such a treat.
Yeah,
thank you.
Really amazing.
Thank you. All right, folks. Well, great session. Lots of love in the chat. I share several times, and this is a production of one. So please be patient with me. I'm going to continue to drop the link to the repo right now. I have this funded project that I'm working on myself for a demo, and I might be able to do it with stargazers, maybe not. So no promises. If I can do it with stargazers, I might see if I can do a poll today and then go and give a star, and then I don't know, maybe you get a mug, a sticker. I'll send you something. So please go by the repo, leave them a star. If you're interested in contributing, open an issue, and have a conversation with this team. I think we can all learn something from here. Team, you're awesome. I appreciate you all. I've shared your LinkedIn and your X profiles on the chat. Folks, go ahead and connect with these folks, because I feel like this is not the last we're going to see of them. You're going to be off to doing amazing things. So thank you. I hope this wasn't too nerve-wracking. I told you we were going to have fun, and I think we did. I hope we did. But I think it's time to go to bed from some of you. So thank you for being here, and thank you for everything that you do and your support of open source. I appreciate you all. I'll see you later, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Well, folks, that was such a treat. Miguel, you're awesome. I know you got to jump to a meeting, but I'll see you soon. That was such an awesome project. And folks, for those of you who are tuning into Open Source Friday and you're wondering, well, there's, that was a university project. It's an open source project. And again, don't be afraid to be a beginner at something. So if you see a project that you think might be a good fit for this program, our main objective here is to shine light on the great value that open source is, not at any stage of your career, right? And also to shine even a brighter light onto folks who are making it better and that are here keeping it afloat. We all depend on this ecosystem. Doesn't matter what you do, We all depend on open source. So we need folks like this who are even earlier in their career, are already thinking about how they can contribute and how they can create things that are going to make our lives easier. So thank you for being here. Like the cool kids said, my DMs are open. If there's a project that you'd like to see in Open Source Friday, send me a message and I'll send you a link to the repo where myself and my awesome colleague Kirisha can take a look at it and bring you on. Thank you for everything you do for the support of open source, for being here today. We'll see you next week. I can't remember what we have next week. I think it might be Grafana, but I'll take a look and drop it on the chat as well. Please, 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 don't be shy with those stars. Let's go ahead and give this project some stars. And I wasn't kidding. That I couldn't run it locally because I had an issue with my API key for OpenAI, but that's my fault. But it's pretty straightforward to get the project running on your own machine. So give it a go. And listen, if you are the open source amazing person that wants to figure out a way to get this hosted and like contribute with that to this team, oh my gosh, go for it. Go for it. Go for it. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being a part of Open Source Friday. Before we go, I will be absolutely remiss if I didn't share with you that GitHub Universe is happening again this year. I hope to see you all there. I'll be there. We're going to be talking to maintainers. We're going to be talking about open source. There are going to be donuts. So I hope to see you all in San Francisco come October. And thank you for being here. We'll see you next week.